I'm a hiker, and I helped a trapped Bigfoot escape in Yellowstone. While I thought I did something nice, the creature's angry mom came after me, turning that day into the most dangerous one of my life. What Bigfoot's mom did to me is more violent than any other documented Sasquatch encounter in history. My name's Jasper Oakton, and most weekends you can find me somewhere out in the backcountry with a pack on my back. Yellowstone's been a favorite of mine for years, the kind of place where you can walk for hours without running into another person. My girlfriend Vivian usually joins me when she can get the time off, and this trip was supposed to be nothing special. A few days off the grid, no cell service, nothing more than a loop we'd mapped out through some pretty remote terrain. She was back at camp filtering water when I decided to scout ahead a bit on my own, and that's when I picked up the sound of metal rattling, something caught and fighting to get free. I followed the sound off the trail, pushing through some thick brush until I found the source. There was an old section of wire fencing back there, rusted, half collapsed, probably left over from whatever used to be out this way decades ago. Tangled up in it was something struggling hard enough to shake the whole section of fence. My first thought was a bear cub, maybe a young elk that got spooked and ran into it wrong. I got closer, moving slow, and that assumption fell apart fast. Whatever was caught in that wire was covered in dark horsehair, but it had hands. Actual hands, gripping at the wire, trying to pull itself free. It looked up at me the second I got close enough for it to notice, and for a second, neither of us moved. It wasn't huge, maybe 5 or 6 feet if it could stand up straight, but it was clearly young, clearly hurt, and clearly not anything I had a name for. I crouched down slowly, hands out, trying to figure out how I was even supposed to help something like this without getting myself hurt in the process. I worked the wire loose bit by bit, careful not to make any sudden movements. It watched me the whole time, tense, but it never actually fought me. Maybe it was too worn out from struggling already, or maybe it somehow understood I was trying to help. I honestly couldn't say which. Footsteps came up behind me, right as I got the last of the wire free, and I about jumped out of my skin. It was Vivian, water bottle still in her hands, walking over to see what was taking me so long. She asked me what it was. All I could tell her was that it was hurt, and that leaving it here tangled in the last of that wire wasn't something either of us was going to be okay with. We got a closer look at it once it settled down enough to let us near. Its hands were the first thing that really got to me. Long fingers, a thumb that worked the way ours does. Nothing about them belonged to an animal. One of its legs was cut up badly from the wire, deep enough that it wasn't putting weight on it. Vivian wanted to know what we were supposed to do with something like this. I didn't have a clean answer. Leaving an injured animal alone out here felt wrong on a basic level, but this wasn't just any animal. We didn't have a vet kit built for something this size, so we worked with what we had, cleaning the wound best we could, wrapping it enough to slow the bleeding. It let us do it, which honestly unsettled me more than if it had fought back. Vivian caught something while we were working that I'd completely missed, and once she pointed it out, I couldn't unsee it either. She'd noticed its foot. 5 toes, arched, shaped almost exactly like a human foot, except twice the size, and covered in the same coarse hair as the rest of it. We immediately thought maybe it was what people call Bigfoot. Foot shaped like a person's, walks upright, covered head to toe in hair. I'd grown up hearing the stories the way everyone does, never once expecting to be kneeling next to actual proof of it. We got it settled into the old structure nearby, half a wall and part of a roof still standing, enough to block some wind. We had a spare tarp in my pack that we rigged up to cover the rest. Vivian pulled out our satellite messenger once we had it settled, more out of instinct than any real plan. She tried sending something out, but the canyon walls around us were bad enough for a signal that all we got back was a failed send notice over and over. We were on our own out here, with something neither of us had a real plan for, and no way to tell anyone what we'd actually found. The rest of that stretch was quiet in a way that started to feel wrong the longer it went on. No birds calling, no squirrels moving through the brush, nothing. Yellowstone backcountry is usually full of noise if you sit still long enough to notice it. This wasn't that. Vivian noticed it too, and I could tell by the way she kept glancing around that she didn't like it any more than I did. I'll admit, something happened to me over the next hour that I wasn't expecting. I got fascinated by it, watching how it moved, how it reacted to us, the way it seemed to actually be paying attention rather than just existing in front of us the way an animal would. Vivian didn't share that fascination. She kept a little more distance than I did, and at one point she asked me straight out if I was thinking clearly about how dangerous this could still be. I told her I was being careful. I'm not sure either of us fully believed that. Right around then, a sound started up from somewhere close close by that neither of us had heard before. Slow and rhythmic, like something knocking wood against wood. The knocking kept going, steady, a few seconds apart, then a pause, then again. I looked around, trying to find where it was coming from, and realized after a minute that it wasn't coming from somewhere out in the trees at all. It was coming from right next to us. The young one had picked up a broken piece of branch and was striking it against a section of the old fence post, deliberately, adjusting the angle slightly each time as if it wasn't satisfied with how it landed. I'd read about wood knocking before, one of those things people mention constantly in Bigfoot sightings, but reading about it online and watching it happen 3 feet away are two very different experiences. The knocking kept getting more frequent as the afternoon went on, steady enough that it started to feel less like noise and more like a pattern. It wasn't the only thing about that afternoon that started making me wonder how much this young one actually understood. Somewhere in that stretch, once it became clear this thing wasn't the only creature its size that might be out here, we decided to rig something near the old fence line, just in case. Vivian's done enough backcountry trips with her dad growing up to know how to put together a basic snare trap, and between the two of us and what was left of that fencing, we spent maybe an hour digging a shallow pit and covering it, telling ourselves it was probably overkill. Neither of us really believed that by the time we were done. By early evening, the food situation started weighing on both of us. A pair of hikers came through not long after that, loud, careless, one of them carrying a rifle slung over his shoulder like it was nothing. The young one went rigid the second it heard them coming, a completely different reaction than anything it had shown around us all day, tense and defensive in a way that put both hikers on edge fast. It took some fast talking to get them moving again without anyone doing anything they'd regret. Before they left, one of them told us to whistle if we ran into any real trouble, since they weren't camping far off. Neither of us expected to actually need that. We'd packed for a normal trip, not for staying an extra day tending to an injured animal we hadn't planned on finding. Vivian did the math out loud, and it wasn't good. We had maybe enough for ourselves if we stretched it, nothing extra to spare. We talked it over and decided one of us should hike back toward a spot we'd passed earlier where we knew there was a small stream and better foraging, plus a chance the terrain might give us a stronger signal. Leaving it alone didn't sit right with either of us, but staying put wasn't going to solve the food problem either. We settled it back into the shelter, checked the wrap on its leg one more time, and told ourselves an hour, maybe less. It seemed calm enough when we left, resting, quiet. We were barely out of sight of camp when the first sound reached us, and it wasn't coming from the direction we were headed. I stopped walking before Vivian even said anything. The sound came again, faint but distinct, something moving through brush back where we'd left it, followed by a low, wavering call that didn't match anything I'd heard from it all day. Vivian wanted to turn back right then. Part of me did, too, but rushing back through unfamiliar terrain in fading light wasn't going to help anyone if we ended up hurt ourselves. We picked up our pace instead, cutting the foraging plan short, focused now on just getting back as fast as we safely could. The sounds kept coming as we moved, spaced out, unpredictable, sometimes closer, sometimes fading enough that we second-guessed whether we'd actually heard anything at all. Vivian kept asking me if I thought it was in pain, or scared, or something worse, and I didn't have a good answer for any of those. We came over the last rise before camp breathing hard, and what greeted us wasn't the quiet, resting animal we'd left behind at all. The tarp was torn half off the shelter, and our food bag, the one we'd left hanging from a branch out of habit, more than real concern, was on the ground, ripped wide open. It was crouched over what was left of it, tearing through packaged jerky and trail mix like it hadn't eaten in days. Hands moving fast, almost frantic. Nothing like the careful, deliberate movements we'd watched all afternoon. I called out to it without thinking, some instinct to announce ourselves rather than just walk up on it eating. Its head snapped up fast, and the look on its face wasn't the same cautious, uncertain animal we'd been caring for all day. Something in its posture had changed too, lower, tighter, coiled in a way that read as ready to move rather than settle. Vivian grabbed my arm, telling me to slow down and give it space, but I was already closing the distance, more worried about the leg wound reopening than anything else at that point. That turned out to be a mistake I understood about 2 seconds too late. It came off the ground fast, faster than anything with an injured leg had any business moving, and hit me square in the chest before I could get my hands up. I went down hard, the wind knocked clean out of me, and it landed on top of me with enough weight that I couldn't get a full breath in. I don't remember deciding to fight back so much as just reacting, arms up trying to keep its hands away from my face and throat. It wasn't going for either. It was going for the food still clutched in my jacket pocket, something I'd forgotten was even there until that exact moment. Vivian was screaming my name somewhere above us, and then I heard her moving, fast, grabbing something off the ground near the fire pit. The next thing I knew, its weight came off me all at once. A solid crack of impact followed by a sound I never want to hear again, somewhere between a roar and a cry of real pain. I finally got a breath in and looked up just in time to see Vivian standing over both of us, weapon still raised, and behind her, close enough that my stomach dropped instantly. Something else had just stepped into the clearing. I've never seen anything that size move that fast toward us. Whatever this young one was going to grow into someday, she was already there, easily half again as tall as it, built like nothing I'd ever be able to explain to someone who hadn't seen it themselves. She wasn't 10 feet away, close enough that I could feel the ground shift under her weight with every step, and her eyes were locked on her young one, curled up on the ground between us, whimpering, favoring the leg that had just taken a hit meant to save me. Vivian froze completely, weapon still up but pointed at nothing useful anymore. I got myself upright as fast as I could, every instinct telling me that staying on the ground was the worst possible position to be in right now, though my legs weren't exactly cooperating after getting the wind knocked out of me twice in the same minute. The mother let out a sound unlike anything either of us had heard from the young one all day, deep, resonant, the kind of noise you feel in your chest more than hear with your ears. She wasn't looking at us like a threat to assess. She was looking at us like something she'd already decided about, and I understood exactly why the second I saw it from her angle. A weapon in Vivian's hand, her young one hurt and crying on the ground between us. Her young one whimpered again, and her attention snapped from us straight down to it, and whatever she saw in that moment made the sound she made next even worse than the first. Vivian was still holding that branch like a weapon, and I could see the exact moment the mother's attention landed on it. Her whole posture changed, shoulders dropping, weight shifting forward, onto her knuckles, every muscle in her body coiling towards something. I grabbed for Vivian's arm, telling her to drop it, but she was frozen, staring at 8 feet of raw muscle, deciding whether to charge. The young one tried to crawl toward its mother, dragging that hurt leg, and I made the worst possible call in that second. I stepped between them, thinking somehow I could buy Vivian time to back off, and I raised the branch I'd managed to grab off the ground myself, more out of pure instinct than any actual plan. I wasn't trying to hurt it. I don't think that mattered to her at all. The second she saw me raise something toward her young one a second time, whatever restraint had been holding her back disappeared completely. She came at me first, and there wasn't anything gentle about it. I felt the impact before I even fully processed she'd moved. A shove more than a strike, but enough force behind it that I was off my feet and hitting the ground hard, all the air gone from my lungs again for the second time in minutes. She didn't stop there. She was on top of me almost instantly, one massive hand pressing down against my chest, pinning me flat, and for a second, all I could see was her face inches from mine, teeth bared, that same deep sound rolling out of her chest like a warning she wasn't planning to give twice. Vivian was screaming something behind us, and distantly, underneath all of it, I could hear the young one too, crying out in a way that didn't sound like pain anymore. It sounded like it was trying to tell her something. Vivian did something I honestly didn't expect from her in that moment. Instead of running, instead of freezing again, she grabbed the whistle clipped to her pack strap, the one we carried for exactly this kind of emergency, and blew it as hard and as long as she could. 3 short bursts, over and over, her hands shaking so badly I could hear it in how uneven the sound came out. Those hikers who had passed us the day before had set up camp not too far off, close enough that sound might actually carry if we were lucky. They'd told us to signal if anything ever went wrong out here. This was about as wrong as it got, and I remember thinking, even pinned to the ground like that, how strange it was that our best plan right then came down to a piece of plastic on a string. I couldn't do much pinned under that much weight, except turn my head enough to see Vivian blowing that whistle like her life depended on it, which, honestly, it did. Mine too. The mother's head snapped toward the sound for just a second, ears back, clearly registering it as something new, something else to be wary of. That pause was the only opening we were going to get. Nobody came. Whether the sound didn't carry far enough, or they'd already moved on from wherever they'd told us they'd be, I don't know. All I knew in that moment was that whatever happened next, it was going to be just the two of us handling it. I didn't waste the opening. I twisted hard to one side, getting an arm free, and reached for the only thing close enough to grab the young one, still crying, still dragging itself toward its mother a few feet away, its bad leg leaving a smear of blood across the dirt with every attempt. I got a hand on it and pulled it toward me, not to hurt it, just to put myself between it and her in a way she couldn't ignore. Her whole body went rigid the second she saw what I was doing, torn between the threat still under her hands and the fact that I now had her young one close enough to matter more than I did. It worked, but not the way I expected. She backed off me fast, that crushing pressure lifting off my chest all at once, but the sound coming out of her now was worse than anything before it. Lower, angrier, a warning that made it very clear I'd bought us seconds, not safety. Vivian got to me the second I was free, hauling me up hard by the arm, both of us backing away together while the young one whimpered between us, still reaching for its mother even as we put distance behind us with every step. We didn't have much time to think it through, and honestly, there wasn't a clean option in front of us either. Vivian pulled the paracord out of her pack, the same stuff we'd used to rig the tarp earlier, and between the two of us, we got it around the young one's wrists, not tight, just enough to keep it from bolting straight back toward her while we figured out our next move. It fought us weakly, more confused than angry, too, worn down from the leg injury and everything else to put up much of a struggle. That felt awful to do, honestly, using an already hurt, scared animal like that, but with its mother still pacing just yards away, growling low and steady. We didn't have a version of this where we came out unhurt without some kind of leverage. I remembered the trap then, the one we'd rigged near the old fence line the day before, back when all we knew was that something large might be in the area, and we wanted a way to buy ourselves time if it came to that. It felt like a different lifetime ago that we'd built it. Now, it was about to become the only real plan we had left. We got the young one moving, half leading, half carrying it toward the fence line where we'd set the trap the day before. Its mother following at a distance the whole way, never charging outright, but never letting more than a few yards of space open up between us either. I had the bear spray out, the only real deterrent we had left after everything else got used or lost in the chaos of the last few minutes. Every time she closed the gap too fast, I gave a short burst in her direction, not enough to fully blind her, just enough to make her flinch back and reset the distance between us. It worked, barely, and it bought us just enough room to keep steering things the direction we needed. My arms were shaking by that point, partly from carrying the young one's weight, partly from the adrenaline that hadn't let up since the attack started. The ground near the fence line still looked undisturbed, covered over the way we'd left it, and I found myself hoping harder than I've ever hoped for anything that the weight of something her size would actually be enough to trigger it properly. We were maybe 15 feet out when she finally lost patience with the spray entirely and came at us hard. No more hesitation left in her at all. She closed the last of that distance faster than either of us could react to, and I shoved the young one toward the disturbed patch of ground ahead of us, hoping to God the timing worked out the way we needed it to. It didn't happen exactly the way I expected. She came in low, reaching past us for her young one, and her front foot came down right in the middle of the covered pit we'd dug the day before. The ground gave out beneath her all at once. She dropped hard, a full body fall that shook the earth under our feet, even from where we stood a few yards back, and the sound she made when she hit those sharpened stakes at the bottom was something I still hear some nights when I can't sleep. It wasn't just pain in that sound. There was real shock in it too, like she genuinely hadn't seen it coming. The wire netting we'd rigged around the edges cinched tight around one arm and both legs the second she thrashed against it, tangling deeper with every attempt to get free. Blood was already showing dark against the fur along her side where the stakes had caught her. She wasn't getting out of that easily, not right away. For the first time since she'd shown up, we actually had a real window. Vivian was already pulling hard at my arm, telling me we needed to move right now while we still had the chance to use it. We didn't grab the young one. We didn't have it in us to try managing that fight again, and honestly, there wasn't time to think it through as anything more complicated than run. We turned and moved as fast as our legs would carry us, cutting through the trees away from the fence line, away from all of it, leaving both of them behind. Neither of us said a word for the first few minutes, just pure motion, branches whipping past, my lungs burning from all the adrenaline finally catching up with me at once. Vivian was ahead of me, faster than I expected, given everything her body had just been through. And I remember thinking distantly that fear does strange things to how far a person can actually push themselves when there's nothing left to plan, only react. We didn't have a real plan beyond putting as much distance as possible between us and that clearing. No trail markers, no landmarks we recognized in the panic, just direction and momentum, and the hope that whatever came next would happen far enough away that we'd have some kind of warning before it caught up to us. Behind us, faint but unmistakable, I heard wood cracking, hard and sudden, followed by a sound that could only mean one thing. Whatever we'd left tangled back there had just found a way to start getting free. The growling started up again within minutes, closer than I wanted to believe possible, given how fast we'd already been moving. She'd gotten free of the trap faster than either of us had counted on, and whatever pain those stakes had caused her clearly wasn't slowing her down the way it should have. Not with her young one still back there, somewhere behind her. Vivian glanced back once and immediately regretted it, picking up her pace even further. And I did the same thing right after, catching a glimpse of movement crashing through brush behind us, low to the ground, closing distance in a way that made my chest go tight with something past fear, something closer to certainty that we weren't going to outrun this on open ground. We cut hard to the left where the terrain dropped into a rocky wash, hoping the uneven ground might slow her down more than it slowed us. And for a stretch, it actually seemed to work. The growling faded slightly, the crashing sounds losing some of their edge, like she was having to pick her footing more carefully than before across the loose rock. I didn't let myself believe we'd actually gained any real ground until we'd put a good few hundred yards behind us without hearing anything close by at all, both of us finally slowing to something closer to a fast, ragged walk. That relief didn't last nearly as long as I wanted it to. We hadn't gone much further when a different sound reached us, one that had nothing to do with the mother chasing us at all. It was coming from behind, back in the direction of the fence line, a sharp, panicked cry, unlike anything we'd heard from the young one all day. I stopped walking. Vivian did too, both of us turning back toward a sound that made absolutely no sense, given we'd just spent the last 10 minutes running from the exact opposite direction. The wire we'd used to bind its wrists must have finally given way during all its struggling, or maybe it had simply been strong enough to work itself loose the whole time and we just hadn't been there to see it happen. Whatever the reason, it was free now, and from the sound of it, moving, calling out in a way that carried far across that open ground. Vivian grabbed my arm hard, asking what that meant for us, whether it changed anything about which direction was actually safe to keep moving in. I didn't have an answer for her. All I knew was that somewhere behind us, two very different kinds of trouble were both converging on the same stretch of forest, and neither of us had any control left over how that was going to play out. We didn't go back. Every instinct we had left told us to keep moving, but curiosity and fear kept us close enough to the ridgeline that we still had a partial view down into the clearing below when things started happening fast. The hikers who'd passed us the day before, the ones we'd tried signaling with the whistle, must have finally decided to come check on the noise, because I caught movement entering the clearing from the opposite side. Two figures moving cautiously with what looked like a rifle between them, calling out something we couldn't quite make out from that distance. The young one saw them first. It bolted, fast despite the injured leg, straight toward the tree line in a full panic, limbs moving in that same low, quick way its mother's had when she first came through the brush after us. From that distance, in that light, I understood exactly how it must have looked to two strangers who had no idea what they were walking into. Something large and fast and completely unfamiliar closing distance on them without warning. The first shot cracked out across the clearing before I could even process what was happening. Then a second, wild off target, more panic than aim, and I felt my stomach drop watching it happen from somewhere I couldn't do a single thing to stop it. The mother's head snapped around from wherever she'd been searching, and whatever she'd been doing up until that exact second stopped mattering completely. She covered that ground faster than anything I'd seen from her all day, faster even than when she'd first come charging out of the trees after us. She hit the clearing at a dead run, straight past the two hikers, straight for her young one, putting her entire body between them and whatever they thought they were shooting at. The hikers scrambled back the second she appeared, dropping the rifle, running for the tree line themselves without firing. Another shot. She didn't chase them. She didn't seem to care about them at all once her young one was actually behind her, safe, tucked against her side. We watched from that ridge as she gathered it up and moved, Fast, low, gone into the trees within seconds. And just like that, the clearing was empty again, except for two strangers scrambling away in one direction and the two of us standing frozen in another. Vivian sat down right there on the ridge, and I sat down next to her, both of us just breathing for a long minute before either of us said anything at all. We got ourselves moving eventually, climbing higher until the satellite messenger finally connected. A real signal went out this time, not a failed attempt lost to canyon walls. It took longer than either of us wanted for that help to actually reach us, long enough that the adrenaline finally wore off completely and left just the shaking and the cold behind. Sitting there waiting, I had a lot of time to think about how the whole thing had actually started. All I'd done that morning was cut a scared, injured animal free from some old wire, and its mother nearly killed us both for it.